Adam, have you ever found any situations where either board members or managers have been arrested for not so obvious issues? And if so, what were those circumstances?
I've seen him arrested for obvious issues and for not so obvious issues. The one that was the, I guess, catalyst for the questions that you want to talk about today was we had a board member who was arrested for knocking on a homeowner's door.
Give me the circumstances.
So, first, I'll premise this with what I always say: no good deed goes unpunished. And there's a reason that the industry has a lot of processes in place. There's a reason that homeowners that you don't board members you shouldn't be and managers you shouldn't be going knocking on people's doors to give them a courtesy knock and say, hey, you're overwatering, or you need to work on your grass or something else. There's a reason you don't do the call. It's because of a lot of variety of issues. In this particular issue, this board member was, he was a really nice guy. The community had a habit of frequently he would just reach out to people and touch base with them. If there was an issue, he'd knock on their door and say, hey, I'm Bob the president, not his real name, and there's this issue, and we want to, just want to bring your attention, see if you guys could, so you guys take care of it. And by the way, nice to meet you, neighbor, that kind of thing. So super nice guy. Went with that approach. The problem is that works until it doesn't work. And we just had the program that we're going over where we're talking about a lot of different people that you can run into and people that have various issues. And the problem that Bob ran into is that he ran into an individual that had a problem with him coming up to their door and a problem with him being there. And Bob's not wearing a body camera. He doesn't have anything, he doesn't have a witness with him. He's going solo and stopping by somebody's door. So they allege that he assaulted them, that he threatened physical violence against them when he got there to the door. And you know, they called it in, and the police picked him up. And he spent the night in jail, and then he had to get he's dealing with a criminal prosecution for assault. And the problem for Bob is there's only one person that should have been there in the doorway, and that's the homeowner. Bob wasn't invited on the property. He had to enter the property. He's having to cross the lawn. He's going to the sidewalk. He's going to the door, which of course, we see people doing solicitation all the time. They're not supposed to do that. But in this particular situation, they called it in, and they picked him up for it, and it was a tough situation for him, emotionally, personally, and also it was the end of Bob doing courtesy door knocks around the community to talk to people about their violations.
I think too, what I'm hearing, Adam, is hopefully it works out fine for Bob. He doesn't sound like an arch criminal, and he'll go through the criminal justice system. But it's already been a loser for Bob already, just based on the emotional aspect of it and the embarrassment. You've already lost at that point, even though you're gonna get your day in court. And I hope Bob most likely wins. And if he's never been in trouble, I'm sure he probably will. But he's already lost.
Yeah, I mean, he came out on top in that situation in the sense that he was exonerated. This is years ago. This is before the proliferation of door cameras. So this was just he said, she said, or he said, he said. I don't remember who the person was on the side situation, but he was ultimately the claim. It was dismissed and whatnot. But the problem is when you're arrested, that goes on your record. You spend the night in jail. That's not fun. You got to pay money for an attorney. That's an issue. And then another thing to consider, in this particular situation, because the board had been very supportive of him in doing these situations, the association did pick up the tab for attorney's fees. But in most situations, particularly today, that's going to be your rogue board member. That's going to be somebody that the board's already told them not to be doing that. They've already said, hey, you're not authorized to go knocking door to door. We have a process for this. Management sends a letter. There's a reason for that. One of them is that we don't want people showing up on people's doorsteps. And so management sends a letter, it's a courtesy notice, a hearing notice, whatever, and the folks respond. So now when you've got a board member doing that, they're a rogue board member, and the association's not going to have an obligation to step in necessarily. Indemnification defense provisions not necessarily going to apply. Insurance probably not going to cover him because he's going outside of the scope of what he's supposed to be doing, particularly if the association's already notified him that he should stop doing that. And that's something where, with our clients, we always put these folks on notice, say, hey, you're not authorized to do this. We're directing you to stop. We're directing you, the association, consider this willful misconduct in the event you do it in the future, and that we're going to press to not be forced to provide you with coverage, either through the indemnification defense provisions, the documents, or the association's policy, because you should not be going door to door knocking on people's doors.
We're going to do it as a topic. I'm glad you gave me the preliminary information that I need. And when we say that Bob came on top, yeah, maybe legally, but maybe not emotionally. Who knows what damage had been done to him with his reputation and even his own emotion, self-awareness after being basically arrested.
He ultimately quit serving on the board, and he'd served for years and was well liked in the community, but he quit. I mean, that was just enough. He'd had enough.
Yeah.
Like I said, no good deed goes unpunished. And it's one of those things, it works and people love it until the one person, and then it's a nightmare situation. And it's just not worth it even for the one time.